Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. Y'all, we are officially back after the holiday special and also after my special holiday with my family. And I have to tell y'all, it was it was a really crazy schedule, but I loved every second of it. So I'm going to start off by sharing some programming notes for the rest of the year, and then we'll talk about the special for a minute, cover my holidays so far, and then get to the actual zoo news stuff. So, programming through the end of the year. Today is going to be the last normal episode of Zoo News for the year, as it is the last Friday of the year. I'm attempting to keep it a little shorter than usual because I'm trying to give myself some space and time over the holiday season, and also, frankly, I have a lot going on right now. Then on Tuesday, we'll have our last interview episode of the year, which I need to explain to y'all. The episode is going to be my complete interview with Amy Fennell from the holiday special. See, when I came up with the initial idea for that interview, Amy was instantly on board, and she went above and beyond. My idea was just that we talk about the birds in the 12 days of Christmas. Amy came back and proposed that every single day should be a bird. And then we did no prep together, each on our own, instead doing, what we could to get ready, and then we just kind of winged it. Wung it? I don't know. I'm not the bird expert. Amy is. Anyway, we had a blast, but I had to cut it down to make it fit the special because I edited it to the point that less than half of the content made it into the special, which made sense in the context of the special and which I thought actually made for a really tight 20 minutes. But the truth is there was a ton of information, a ton of joking around, a ton of additional birds mentioned, and just those fun human interactions y'all enjoy so much that didn't make it in. So I am releasing that full interview unedited on Tuesday. Amy has allowed me to do that, which is amazing. There's a lot of hemming and hawing and going back and forth and talking over each other, but there's also just, it's so good on so many levels. So that's going to be out on Tuesday. And then on Friday, the first episode of 2025 will drop, and it will be Zoo News. But instead of doing an episode with news from that week, I'm going to do a best of the rest of 2024. Y'all send me so many amazing Zoo News stories that I can't get them all into each week's episode. And some of those stories are so interesting and weird and just unique that I keep them on my phone ready to go. But then, as we get more and more Zoo News, they get pushed further and further down the queue. So that episode is going to feature just some of my favorite stories that haven't made it into Zoo News yet. And not only do I think all of those things will be a lot of fun for everyone, but it also means that I will be able to record that in the next day or so. And since the Amy episode is also done already, I can actually take a full week off from the podcast for the end of the year, while still providing you with all new to you content, or in Amy's case, like more than half. And that's just something that I haven't done since I launched the podcast 4.5 years ago. To put it mildly, I am excited at the prospect of a week off, even though I admit I do love doing this. So that's the plan, but keep those Zoo News stories because anything you send between now and the first normal Zoo News episode of the year will still be in consideration for that episode. And then that brings us to my life for the last week. There were two things that combined to be my main focus, the holiday special and Christmas with my family, and both were truly fantastic experiences. I knew I wanted to go bigger with the special this year, and boy did we. Last year, there were 13 people involved in the show. This year, 28, more than double. And that's legitimately crazy pants to me. I am so thankful everyone was willing to work with me and make it happen, and I especially hope y'all enjoyed me bringing some of my musical friends to the party to serenade y'all. That's something I definitely want to continue doing in the future, and I have to say that it was extra fun walking into a recording studio to lay down the drums for Run Run Rudolph, knowing the entire episode would be dropping just a few hours later as long as, I could get that song mixed. I've heard from a lot of y'all so far about the special, and it was all positive stuff. But if you haven't reached out yet, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you have any ideas. I actually have already started writing the 2025 special. There was one idea that I could not figure out how to make work this year. It was just kind of a skit idea. And I worked on it, and I just couldn't crack it. And then today, while I was on lunch at the aquarium, actually, I cracked it. And so I started writing it. And it was a lot of fun for me to start to have that down already. But yeah, reach out. Let me know. What did you love? What could you do without? You can message me on the socials, email me at rossifaripod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you think of the special. And of course, that's also how you can send me zoo news things. So good to know all around. And I really, truly hope that the special brought you some joy and laughter during what can be a stressful time. But for me, it actually hasn't been stressful. Zoe, the dogs, and I drove down to Harrisburg on Friday, where we snagged Miles after school, and we headed to our place down there to hang out. On Sunday, my folks came up and we did our Christmas together at the house. It was a low-key, informal affair, but we had an amazing time. Then we hung out with Miles until around 8:30 on Christmas Eve when I took him back to his mom's house and the rest of us headed back to Buffalo. When we got home and got settled in, it was around 3:30 in the morning on Christmas. But Zoe had to work a 12-hour shift on the holiday, and I knew I'd have to go to bed early that night because I was going to be at the aquarium on Boxing Day. So we just kind of decided to open our presents right then at 3:30. Neither one of us had taken the time to wrap anything, but it was actually really joyful and kind of funny and just a very us thing to do. We had actually put the majority of our decorations up in Harrisburg, but we did get a little tree in Buffalo, but we hadn't decorated it yet. But fortunately, I got my Rossifari ornament from Cabby Trails, and Barbara Bennett sent me a red panda ornament from the Cincinnati Zoo and some Christmas cookies. Thank you, Barbara. And so we hung those two ornaments, we opened the cookies, and we had our own little Christmas that went till about 4 a.m, and then we passed out. But part of the reason I want some downtime before going into full production mode for next year is that while I had an awesome time, the special and the trip to Harrisburg were a lot. And there's no rest for the weary as I'm at the aquarium on Boxing Day and the day after, and then may or may not buy a new car on Saturday that's kind of up in the air. But then I'm heading to New Hampshire to do Christmas and New Year's with Zoe's family. And that's a trip that starts on Sunday, but has a quick detour to Mendon, Massachusetts to see Danny Poirier Larson and meet the newest little Larson. I'm really excited for the trip, and New Hampshire is always a very restful place for me. But yeah, there's just a lot going on in the life of John. And that is all of it. And that brings us to...
Well, it's 1 for the pandas, 2 for the bears, 3 for the monkeys. Now you should care. Now won't you listen to Zoo News? Oh, you could do anything, but why not listen to Zoo News? Well, it's a Zoo News.
All right, so our headline story this week isn't actually about zoos or conservation at all, but is instead about our companion animals. The best ones, hands down, dogs. And y'all, this story is going to get really, really dumb really quickly, so brace for impact. A recent study has shown that as many as 37% of American dog owners have become skeptical of dog vaccinations, and the number may actually be higher. Yep, the anti-vax movement has gone to the dogs, literally. And this is a huge problem for a lot of reasons, but before we get to the dog side of things, I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into the history of the anti-vax movement. There has been a conspiracy about vaccinations for a long, long time. In fact, the first records I could find of a true anti-vaccination movement go back to the mid-1800s, when the smallpox vaccine was developed in the United Kingdom. The vaccine was seen as unchristian, as it involved putting animal parts into the skin of a human. It also was based on a new understanding of how disease spreads and how the body fights it, making lay people who did not believe the most up-to-date science convinced it was a scam. And then, when the government mandated the vaccine, a third group of protesters popped up saying that the law violated their personal liberties. And yes, all of this should sound chillingly familiar to people who have dealt with the current anti-vax movement. And then these same protests popped up in the United States in the late 1800s, when a smallpox outbreak led to vaccinations being recommended in the states, with some areas making them mandatory. In 1879, the Anti-Vaccination League of the United States was formed, and they waged a battle against the smallpox vaccine all the way until a Supreme Court decision stated that it was allowed for vaccines to be mandated in the early 1900s. As major vaccines were invented and implemented in the United States, each wave saw a new anti-vax movement crop up. In the 1970s, vaccines against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis also came with their own protests. And if I'm saying any of those wrong, that's because we don't deal with those diseases anymore because of the vaccinations actually, working. And then the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines in the 1990s came along and also had their own protests. And this was actually the main controversy about vaccines that still haunts us to this day. A British doctor by the name of Andrew Wakefield basically claimed, though I'm simplifying this, that the MMR vaccine caused autism in some people. Now, it has been proven that Wakefield falsified data, and he was struck from the medical register in Great Britain and not allowed to practice medicine anymore, and he officially retracted his original paper and also admitted that it was only published after he was paid by a law firm that was trying to create a case linking vaccines to medical conditions in children. But before all of those repercussions happened, the media ran with it, and a large group of people became convinced that vaccines were evil and causing autism. Now, what makes this the most American story ever is that what really made the anti-vaccination movement grow from this autism concern was one person, Jenny McCarthy. And if you don't know that name, you might be wondering what scientific position she held or where she got her medical degree from, given that she was able to make this movement grow so much. Nope, none of that. In fact, Jenny McCarthy began her career as all the best scientific thinkers of our era do. She was a nude model in Playboy, eventually being named Playmate of the Year in 1993. She then started a television hosting and acting career, as well as a movie career that included such brilliant scientific documentaries as Basketball, Scream 3, Dirty Love, John Tucker Must Die, and Santa Baby. She not only claimed that vaccines caused her child to get autism, but she claimed that chelation therapy cured her son of the disease. Now, seeing as how that therapy cannot cure autism, that is simply a false claim, and led many scientists to point out that since there is no cure for autism, if he no longer had the disease, he never had the disease, meaning vaccines sure as heck didn't give it to him. But people believed their favorite playmate, and the movement continued to grow with the creation of like-minded bubbles as the internet grew. And then we got to COVID, and the world came to a standstill, and the anti-vax crowd grew even larger as people resented being kept at home, resented having to wear masks, and resented having to get a vaccine in order to start having the semblance of a normal life again. And now, those same people are convinced that it's not just human vaccinations that are the problem, but canine vaccines as well. The study I mentioned at the top of this rant discovered that 30% of dog owners believe that canine vaccinations are medically unnecessary. 20% of dog owners believe vaccinations are ineffective. 40% believe they are unsafe, and that, wait for it, just under 37% of dog owners believe that some of the canine vaccines can lead to canine autism. Y'all, when I read that, I literally had to stop and go online and check my sources again because I was 100% convinced that I was on a parody site and somehow missing that fact. I was not. And look, I'm obviously having some fun with this, but the truth is, it's not really a laughing matter. I'm just a goofball. Rabies is out there, and it is a nasty disease. It affects the central nervous system, leading to aggressive behavior, paralysis, seizures, and eventual death. The dogs that get it can not only spread the disease to other dogs, but also to humans and other animals. And if you get a suspected rabies bite, you're going to need a very painful shot. And if you don't get that shot, well, over 59,000 people die from rabies each year, still in 2024. And that's just the most famous, if you will, of the doggy diseases. And this is a particularly important topic for me because not only does this put animals and humans in general at risk, but it poses a particularly strong risk to veterinary professionals because they see a lot of animals, often under very stressful conditions, and many of the diseases dogs are vaccinated against are zoonotic, meaning they can spread between animals and humans. And yes, beyond my concern for the vets in general out there, such as my wife, I mention this for another reason. I'm guessing at least some of you are thinking, okay, good info, John. Deep breath now, buddy. Your audience probably isn't the type who wouldn't believe in vaccinating our dogs, so maybe we don't need this long discussion about it. And I mean, look, you're right about the first part, and I love y'all for being those good people. But it's also worth pointing out that so many of the social situations we put our dogs into are based on the norm of dog vaccinations. Dog parks, stores like Bass Pro Shop and Home Depot that allow dogs, they all say the dogs have to be vaccinated, but they don't check that they are. Even the waiting room of a veterinarian's office doesn't check the vaccination status of the animals that are waiting there. So it's something you need to be aware of for your little loves, even if you do personally vaccinate regularly. Be aware of this growing movement and act accordingly. And just in case you don't believe me on this topic, I actually asked Zoe, who is an actual veterinarian, to go into a very detailed scientific explanation of all of this and to give you a much deeper understanding of what an actual veterinarian thinks of this highly complex and challenging situation. So buckle in because this is a person who gets this topic better than anyone I can think of. And there's just so much to say. So take it away, Zoe.
No, nope, not that. These people suck.
All right, there you have it. A very scientific explanation of why these people are incorrect. Well said, babe. Thank you for that. And that brings us to our births for the week. Our friends at Metro Richmond Zoo have announced that they got what the song says they should get, a hippopotamus for Christmas. Okay, so technically it was a pygmy hippo, and it was born on December 7th, but it was announced on Christmas Eve, so close enough. Mother Iris and Father Corwin are doing well taking care of the little one, which is their third baby in the last 4.5 years. Very cool. The Colchester Zoo has announced the birth of an aardvark, or aardlet, born to parents OQ and Coos, proving that the zoo is better at breeding aardvarks than it is at naming them. The little one is doing well, bonding with mom behind the scenes. Our friends at Wildlife World Zoo have welcomed a new baby colobus monkey. The zoo is actually quite committed to the species, with 2 colobus habitats, one near the east entrance of the zoo and one in the safari park expansion. Sounds like this won't be the only little colobus at the zoo over the next few years. Bright's Zoo has announced the hatching of a baby penguin named Barton. Barton was born to Lilo and Bert, and he is learning how to swim and dive with the other penguins already. Congrats to the team at the zoo. 2 parentes have hatched at the Los Angeles Zoo. Parentes are a monitor lizard species, and this is the first time they have hatched at the zoo, which is only the third AZA zoo to successfully reproduce these beautiful Australian lizards. Big victory in doing so. Very cool. And then that brings us to our deaths, and we have 2 this week. Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium has said goodbye to an iconic animal, the last hammerhead shark that called the aquarium home, after a significant decline in her health. Hammerheads are super rare in aquariums, and this year has seen the loss of a few of the older ones, meaning they are becoming just even more rare in human care in the United States. The aquarium has announced they will not be bringing another hammerhead in, so this is truly the end of an era for Point Defiance. And then I'll use the remaining time in this section to send my love to the Wild Felid Advocacy Center of Washington, which has experienced the worst outbreak of avian influenza of any zoological facility I've heard of so far. Over 50% of the cats that call the center home have caught the disease, and so far they have lost an Umber tiger, 4 cougars, a caracal, 2 Canada lynx, a Jeffrey cat, a Bengal cat, a Eurasian lynx, 4 bobcats, and 5 servals for 20 animals in total so far. This is absolutely devastating and also just a really great reminder of how bad this disease is. Now, I mentioned last week that in the wake of Wildlife World Zoo losing 5 animals to the disease, many zoos are tightening their biosecurity protocols, and I can only imagine that this tragedy will cause them to look even closer at what they need to do to absolutely keep this disease away from their facilities. And moving on from births and deaths, that brings us to the rest of our Zoo News section. It feels like basically every week lately has featured a story about the AZA, and that trend will continue this week. We talk a lot on here about the various ways the AZA contributes to conservation, most notably through the 50 and counting SAFE programs that have come into being in the last few years. And we obviously spend gobs of time talking about the incredible conservation work done at AZA facilities. But there is another way the AZA contributes directly to conservation that I wanted to talk about this week, the Conservation Grants Fund. And I thought I would share this with y'all in light of the fact that the AZA has announced the 8 projects the fund will be supporting this year, giving out nearly $165,000 directly to the projects to get them going. The 8 winners were chosen from 20 proposals sent to the Conservation Grants Fund, with the Scientific Advisory Committee determining the winners. This year, those winners will unite experts from AZA-accredited facilities with people at conservation organizations, research institutions, and even people in the communities where the conservation work is done. Furthermore, this year, each selected project aligns with the priorities of one of the SAFE programs. And I'm really impressed not just with the Conservation Grants Fund and the thoroughness of the vetting process, but with the diversity of ideas that are being funded this year. So much so that I'm going to share the title of each of the 8 proposals that received funding. The first one is called A Safe Landing for Mid-South Monarchs. The next one is AZA Safe African Lion, Growing Partners and Measuring Impact. We then have establishing sperm cryopreservation protocols to support genetic management of whooping cranes. There's Project Prairie Conservation Institute, protecting the vultures of northern Tanzania, saving critical overwintering habitat for the migratory monarch butterfly in central Mexico, sunflower sea star eDNA development, and, last but not least, the use of automated penguin monitoring systems as a tool to monitor resource competition and other at-sea threats around African penguin breeding colonies in South Africa. Now, while some of the titles are more descriptive than others, and some of them are frankly a mouthful, there's no denying that the projects are truly all over the place. From butterflies to sea stars to lions and bird sperm, the AZA is going to be funding a wild variety of projects that will be having huge positive effects on many species around the globe in 2024. And remember, these are just the projects funded by the Conservation Grants Fund itself. Each SAFE program also works to fund projects on its own, either individually or with field partners. All of this is just further evidence of the fact that the AZA is one of the most impressive conservation organizations out there in a variety of ways that often don't get the attention that the adorable animals living in AZA facilities get. I am obviously very proud to be a member of the AZA and part of some of their conservation work. This is all just so cool. All right, and moving on from that topic, the Perth Zoo has released 13 numbats to a predator-free protected sanctuary in South Australia. The numbats were head-started for a year at the zoo before heading out to their new environment. Numbats are incredibly endangered, and the Perth Zoo is the only zoological institution in the world that breeds the species. Here's hoping more zoos will join this program and that the species will continue to get support from conservationists as time goes on. The Brevard Zoo in Florida recently teamed up with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to rehabilitate and release 5 black bear cubs. The zoo named the little ones Hazel, Ichabod, Harry, Turner, and Hermione before releasing them back into their natural range. Now, obviously, the care given to these cubs was vastly different than the care given to the animals that will be lifelong residents at the zoo, so I want to give a special shout out to the team at the zoo for not only participating in this amazing project, but for adapting the work that they do to take care of these animals and doing so wonderfully. And then last but not least in zoo news this week, Mufasa, the Lion King, is officially in theaters, and while the animals in the film are CGI, the sounds used for them are not. And many of those sounds were recorded at various zoos. The warthog sounds came from Bruce and Gibbs, the warthogs at the Abilene Zoo. And some of the noises of elephants, meerkats, and a hornbill were recorded at the Memphis Zoo. The sound engineers on the movie were very thorough, carrying 20-plus microphones and 12 multi-track recorders to record every nuance of every animal sound. Very, very cool stuff. And that brings us to
Conservation! Conservation! News time! Oh yeah!
I often talk about the fact that there are many animals that we know about but don't really know about in the world, and one of those is the spade-toothed whale. When a carcass recently washed ashore in great shape, it provided researchers with the opportunity to perform a dissection on one of those whales for the first time ever, and the results were fascinating. For starters, spade-toothed whales have stomachs with 9 chambers. They also have tiny vestigial teeth. Now, vestigial structures are considered remnants of evolution, meaning that as the species evolved, it lost its need for teeth, but still has some just kind of chilling there because they haven't fully gone away yet, because there hasn't been any evolutionary pressure to actually completely get rid of them. They also have vestigial hind limbs that are severely reduced but appear to be from back when the ancestors of these whales walked on land. That's right, they even have tiny little hips and even little leg-like structures despite, not being able to walk on land anymore. It is truly amazing what just one dissection is providing as far as information about this species we know so little about. Even just getting an idea of how large the organs are and stuff like that is really important to help understand the species. And as a bonus cool part of the story, the spade-toothed whale is a very important figure in Maori culture. As such, the scientists who worked on this dissection actually collaborated with and got permission from the Maori tribe to do the work, and were even led by some of the Maori in their work. The Department of Conservation and the Maori tribe came together for this undertaking in a really beautiful way. An orca named Taliqua by researchers has given birth to a healthy calf as part of the southern resident J-pod last week. Taliqua is not only an experienced mother, but came to fame a few years ago when she had a calf that died and she carried it over 1,000 miles over the span of 17 days before letting go of it. This story captured the internet by storm, with a lot of people coming to understand the depth of feelings and intellect these incredible animals have by witnessing what they interpreted as her mourning. She has since given birth to another calf that stayed healthy, and now this latest one has joined the family. And last but not least, in conservation news, the Federal Highway Administration in the United States has announced that the North Carolina Department of Transportation will receive $25 million to build new wildlife crossing structures on Route 64, an area of the state that houses the remaining red wolf population, as well as black bears, deer, bobcats, turtles, and more. In the past 5 years alone, 6 red wolves have been killed on this one road. So this is a huge deal in helping to save one of the most endangered animals in the world. In total, this money will build 11 wildlife crossings of various sizes, which is just so exciting. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now, now it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
One of the most insane stories I've seen this week involves a duck-billed box turtle. Now, you may be wondering if this is a species you've never heard of before or a weird hybridization of a duck-billed platypus and a box turtle, and the answer is no. Instead, it's the story of a 70-year-old box turtle named Mr. Bubbles. Mr. Bubbles was gifted to his family in the 1960s and was passed through the family, but the people who took care of him didn't actually know what was, required to take care of a box turtle. And as such, they didn't provide the proper nutrients or lighting or do anything to help the beak growth that box turtles have. And so his beak grew and grew until it literally looked like a duck's beak on a turtle's face. And it stayed that way for decades, with Mr. Bubbles still able to eat and function, until one of the next generation of caretakers posted a picture of him online. Sure enough, the internet quickly weighed in and said the situation was not okay, and the family took Mr. Bubbles to the Turtle Rescue of the Hamptons, where they have taken him in and trimmed his beak until he looks like a normal turtle again. They've given him a proper diet and proper lighting with UV and everything, and so the sky is really the limit for this old turtle who has gotten a second lease on life. It is well worth Googling Mr. Bubbles the box turtle to see this amazing transformation. And honestly, I have to say it, while it is horrible to see a turtle with a beak like that, it's also kind of cute. Like, knowing that he's okay now and everything. I mean, I feel for the lad. I do. But it is a cute look. I hate to say that. I do. It's our little secret. I wish that had never happened to him, but since it did, it is well worth the Google. And hey, if the movement to the new year has you feeling old, I think I can help with this last story. Henry, the world's oldest known crocodile, is celebrating his 124th birthday at the Croc World Conservation Center in South Africa. He has fathered over 10,000 children and is still doing amazingly well. So, yeah, maybe you're not that old after all. Or maybe on the flip side, some of you are listening to this and thinking, hey, I feel like Henry. Either way.
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, it is the end of December, and there's still no animal month for December. Today, December 27th, is Visit the Zoo Day, and December 28th is the anniversary of the U.S. Endangered Species Act. And that's it for your animal holidays for the day, the week, the month, and the year. And that'll bring us into January, which sadly also doesn't have its own animal for the month, which is surprising to me. And actually, there are no new animal holidays until next week. So you'll have to wait for your first animal holidays for the new year for a whole nother week. But yeah, those are your animal holidays for the week and month and year. Alrighty, folks, there you have it. A fun little episode of Rossifari Zoo News. I would like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. And I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed stories this week, especially during the holidays. Thank you, Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Dr. Natalie Taco, Dr. Laura Shank, Matt Patford, Sarah Gilsoul, Lizard Dunlevy, and Yoshioka, Miles Rossi, Dr. Zoë Rossi, and of course, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky.
The Malenskys.
Haha, didn't want y'all to miss that one. So glad they got something in. All right, well, that's all I got for this week. So, hey, we'll be back with all the fun stuff I talked about for the next couple of episodes. And remember, friends, the words Newsy Credits Backwards are Steiderk Yiswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoë Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. And I'd also like to say, everyone, nope.